These teachings of the Living Light philosophy were given through the mediumship of Mr. Richard P. Goodwin. Spiritual Awareness Class, CC 8.
Now tonight, before getting to your questions and answers, I would like to speak for a few moments on what he has so often spoken about, the law of change, or the law of progression. Now we all agree, of course, and know that you cannot progress, nothing can progress without changes, internal changes. And so it is that the barometer of success is simply an effect. Now, when we speak of change or progression or success, the reason that it is so very, very difficult for most people to be successful, to change from one level to another, is because the mind is completely and wholly conditioned to failure. Now, the reason that the mind is conditioned to failure is simply because the mind has accepted fear for untold centuries. So whatever we have accepted fear, we guarantee what is to follow as failure. And therefore, it is very clear to any student on the path who is seeking success in their spiritual efforts to recognize that the struggle reveals the extent of the success or change or progression that they are making. Now, the struggle we experience simply because of the way our minds have been conditioned to failure and conditioned by fear. Now, I'm going to go to your questions and answers, and this evening we will start with Group 2, please. You have any questions in Group 2? Yes. Would you rise, please?
Yes, in Discourse 8, which we just read, he emphasizes at the end that he is speaking of the essence or spirit of man, not of the form of man, as far as finding the missing link here on earth, that he comes from another planet. Am I correct in understanding then that maybe the form of man we could find the missing link for, but not necessarily the spirit of man?
Well, when he's speaking in Discourse 8, in reference to the missing link of man will not be found on your planet because on your planet it did not come. You see, he's speaking about the missing link between the so-called four-legged creature and the so-called two-legged creature. He states in Discourse 8 that the reason that missing link that they have not yet been able to find will not be found on your planet because on your planet it does not exist and did not exist. That's what he stated in Discourse 8. Yes. Thank you. Group 1, did Group 1 have a question? Yes.
I wonder if you could give us some practical exercise or suggestion for how to visualize. Some people are very good at this, and others kind of think an image but are unable to project it in front of them.
I would suggest, if anyone having any difficulty with the techniques or the processes of visualization, is to choose something that you desire. For then it is the most easiest thing in the world to visualize. For example, if a lady desires a new mink coat, she usually does not have any problem whatsoever in visualizing a mink coat simply because the desire for it has been awakened within the mind. So the easiest thing, of course, to do would be to start with the visualization of some strong desire that you may have. You will then find that it is much easier to visualize that you desire, because energy is already being expended into the form of your own desire. I would suggest that the student try that in the beginnings if they have difficulties with visualization.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Group 3? Any questions from Group 3? All right, then we'll move to, that's Group 5 over there. Group 5? Yes,
I can't really say anything about the discourse tonight, but I don't know if I wanted to share something. I read this book a couple of days ago. This lady I work for just said, do you want to read a book? She thought it was very interesting, and it was written for kids in school. And so I said, sure, and it was called Jonathan something Siegel. Anyway, it was really, I couldn't believe it. I read the book and it started talking about all the stuff he'd been, teaching, well, not all of it, but parts of it. And just that really interested me to see that somebody else had written something too. Because, I like to get, see if other people feel the same way about such things. And if anybody's interested, you should really check out that book and read it, because it's really, really interesting and it means a lot.
thank you very much for sharing that with us. Anyone else in Group 5? Group 1, please.
I think
Yes.
that those of you who read Jonathan Livingston Seagull will see that he took a page right out of the Spiritualist Manual. That's what it is. It's the Spiritualist Church from start to finish, but he couldn't say it very well with human beings. It's a very wonderful book, very amusing and very worthwhile.
Thank you. Group 6, please. Group 6? Yes? Would you rise, please?
Okay, let me see how to express this. There's the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. Is emotion, does that come under the heading of mental? The emotions?
Yes.
That's in the mental realm.
That's in the mental realm, yes.
Let's see, okay. Could you perhaps tell me what it is when, let's say, you are with a group of spiritually oriented people and you feel yourself getting very high? Does that come from is that like a bad emotional level, or is it a good emotional level? It's like a very high, uplifting energy kind of feeling.
Well, that would depend, of course, on what the delayed effects are, if any. That would depend. If you get emotionally high, then you guarantee an emotional low. But there is such a state of having a fullness of the spirit, where you would not have the reaction of an emotional low. There is a difference. That would depend, of course, on your experience. It would have to be judged accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Group 6.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
in this book, the old one speaks about the so-called, this kind of got me for a minute, the so-called law of magnetism. And that in the past weeks he had been watching whoever the group was working, and that they were being drawn by like sponges. Did he mean the energy was, but isn't that energy, whenever I have given, I feel then I've gotten, because since I've been in this church and coming to these classes and doing my work, my energy level has been very high.
Yes. Well, he was speaking to the students who had not chosen to give in. That was not what they were doing. And they were expressing on levels in such a way that they were being depleted. For example, when man discusses things of a spiritual nature, by the law of discussing them, he becomes attuned to a spiritual dimension. Now, how attuned he becomes to that dimension is totally dependent upon the receptivity of the individual at the time he is discussing spiritual matters. When we discuss spiritual matters on a brain or mental level, then we are taking a great chance of depleting this life-giving force. For what we are actually doing, we are putting this refined level of awareness into a much grosser one, and we are depleting ourselves in the process. So, now the Bible puts it in a fine way when it says, cast not your pearls before the swine. If a person is spiritually in tune, then they are going to be replenished by the Spirit in which they are in tune. If they are not spiritually in tune and they are expressing spiritual matters, then they are going to become mentally exhausted and drawn like sponges. This is why a person does not, having awakened to some extent to the power of the Spirit, they do not intellectualize it, and they do not waste their energies in trying to put it under a microscope. Now, if you have shared things of the Spirit, then you have shared them in a spiritual vibration. Consequently, you would not be depleted. But if you share those spiritual things in a mental level with those who are not as awakened, then you're going to be vastly depleted. That's this drawing of this magnetism that he is speaking about.
I have some depletion, but that is my own fault, as you explained
Yes.
to me. But I have really, I'm not saying this because I'm pro-you, although I am, but my energy level has never been as high since I have been coming to the classes. I mean, I know I get up at 6 in the morning and I'm going until late at night, and every morning that energy is there. And if I feel that I haven't it, I concentrate on energy and vitality.
And you become receptive to it.
Yes, I just feel this and I can go right on with my work. It's really been amazing. I can't help but say that I really am very grateful, because I've never had such a fullness and so much love and feeling in my heart as I have to this group. But I have another question, too, and I want to bring up. Does everything have a soul? I mean, is there a soul in everything? I know the spirit of a thing is the meaning of it.
Everything that has form is soul and has a covering.
Thank you.
Yes. Soul is the essence of the form itself. It is what the form gathers itself around. Yes.
Like when we incarnate, could we, let's say, progress from being like a rock or a plant life on a planet, and then in the next life come in and be a higher form of animal on the next planet? Have we gone through incarnations as, let's say, inanimate objects and plants on other planets?
Let me explain it this way, perhaps it will help you. The divine spirit, which is formless and free, has expressed and is expressing through a multitude of forms. The divine energy, which is presently expressing through ourself, could have expressed through a rock or tree or an animal or a mouse or a dog or a cat. Remember, that is not form. We are now speaking of the formless. The divine power is one. One. It is not a million, it is only one. So the energy, the so-called spirit that is flowing through us this moment, is identically the same spirit that is holding the atoms, electrons, and molecules together in a rock, or in a blade of grass, or in a tree, or in a bird. It is the same power, the same God. The only difference is its covering, which we call soul. Soul is form. Spirit is formless. That is the difference between the two. Now, if you want to say, for example, I now have the form of a human being. Did I have the form of a blade of grass before? The form that comes from this planet has in it all of the forms that have preceded it. So in that sense, yes, you do. Also, the form which we are now expressing in has all of the knowledge that has been gathered by all of the forms up to this present moment. And in that sense, yes, we have. Does that help with your question?
Yes, it does.
Yes. Yes.
Am I to understand that doesn't mean, I mean, once that we have incarnated into the human form, we're certainly, or are we going to incarnate, the soul incarnate in a blade of grass or a rock? No.
The soul does not regress. Eternal progression is the law of form. Whether it's the form of a blade of grass or a tree or a human being, it is eternally progressive. It propels itself, constantly evolving. That is the very law of form itself. You see, when people speak of the disintegration of form, they must consider that disintegrates, integrates. When you have death, you have birth. And when you have birth, you have death. Now, he stated in these classes once that man is never born. He simply becomes aware of the dimension in which he is expressing. And so it is that we are presently aware of this dimension, for this is the dimension that we're expressing in. Some of us are aware of several other dimensions because we have awakened to those dimensions, and by awakening to those dimensions, we have become born in them. You see, we cannot be born until we awaken. And this is what the Bible prophets spoke about when they said a spiritual birth, that ye may be born spiritually. You can't be born spiritually until you awaken to the spiritual. When we awaken to the spiritual, then we have spiritual birth. Now, when we awaken to the astral, we'll have astral birth. We've already awakened to the mental because we have mental birth. We've already awakened to the physical because we have physical birth. Don't you see, it is only a matter of awakening. That's all that it is. But you see, if you want to awaken spiritually, if you want birth, you must be willing to accept death. You can't have birth without death, and you can't have death without birth. So it isn't a matter what you must garner up to awaken. It's simply a matter of what you must give up. What you give up dies, and what dies, something else is born. But you see, that takes faith. You have to have faith in birth, in something that you're not aware of until you're born in it. So that's the great important thing that faith serves. Faith is the bridge between the dimensions. It's the bridge from the material to the mental, and from the mental to the spiritual. The only bridge you're ever going to find is known as faith. And you cannot be born until you're willing to die. Does that help with your question? Group 6. Group 7 has some questions. Yes?
It would make me believe then, or I would have faith in the fact that those people who are spiritually awakened on this plane and are then experiencing constant rebirth once that spiritual awakening occurs, so that the evolutionary process is stepped up. And so we have rebirth constantly among spiritually minded people. That was one thing that came up. When you're doing the fountain exercise, I always start out seeing the fountain, but I cannot help but become the fountain.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel good about that. I feel that perhaps that exercise is when this prana starts moving up, it is a help to release it, which is more comfortable. You know, they say you go through these chemical changes. I think perhaps spiritually you can, by using that exercise, control that chemical change.
Yes. The fountain exercise is designed to reveal your level of awareness at any given moment that you are meditating and visualizing and seeing the fountain. What it actually does is reveal your state of consciousness or awareness. Now, as you study your colors and you study your numbers, you will become aware of what level you're on. Anytime that you visualize the fountain, it will reveal that level to you. Now, students who practice their fountain exercise have found how quickly the fountain changes and how very difficult it is to keep the same color or the same fountain. It's almost impossible. The reason that it's almost impossible, that's the way the mind is working. It's constantly flitting up and down through the levels, second by second. Very few. This is why it is so difficult for the students to have this peace that passeth all understanding, because they haven't taken the time, the years, and the effort to concentrate and to stay on one level long enough to fully experience the level. You're not born in just an instant. You don't become aware in just an instant. It's a process. You got to hold it long enough so that it will happen. Yes, Group 6. Do you have a question?
Well, what you said was answered, because I wondered what it meant when I saw a certain color. I had chosen 3 colors, and I kind of visualized the fountain at Forest Lawn because that was something I'm familiar with. And I saw these, and all of a sudden the color changed and another one entered, and I'm very happy with the color.
Yes. Now that's a change in your vibratory wave, so that's what you experience, don't you say? And now, like here asked this evening, is there an exercise whereby a person who has difficulty with visualization could make it easier for them? And I tried to explain at that time, just choose something that you desire greatly. And believe me, it will visualize, it'll come before your sight before you know it. Yes, now Group 7, yes.
How could you visualize wisdom?
Very simple. In the mind, you see, a wise philosopher once said, whatever the mind can imagine, it can and does create. I am sure that we will all agree here this evening that our mind can imagine wisdom. You see, we would have to be able to imagine wisdom in order to think wisdom. Because you see, we can't think anything we can't imagine. It's impossible. You see, so it is that the mind has imagined wisdom and we think wisdom. Well, what does wisdom mean to us? That's the first question one should ask. What does it mean to you?
Unknowing.
And what does knowing mean?
A truth.
It means truth. It means a truth. Then that means that your mind accepts more than one truth.
At the moment, yes.
Aha. Therefore, you see, this is how we get to know ourselves, by questioning the self. First off, we say that it's a knowing. And then we say that it's a truth. Now that means that we accept the possibility of more than one truth. You'll agree on that, won't you? That is what your mind accepts. Consequently, if the mind accepts a truth, then it must accept many truths. And if it accepts many truths, it must accept variety. And if it accepts variety, then it has accepted creation. And if it has accepted creation, then it accepted duality. And if it has accepted duality, then we don't have truth. This is why I wanted to clarify that with you. Was it truth? Does it mean truth to you? Or if it means a truth, then we're in creation. Don't you see? See, a truth. For example, there is only truth. There aren't 2 truths, there aren't 30 truths, there aren't 500 truths. There is just truth. Now some people may say, one truth. I say there is truth. Truth is truth. If you say a truth, then you've got many truths. And you're guaranteeing contradiction, you're guaranteeing duality.
I understand what you mean, but
If you say the truth, wherever it may be found, because you can find truth anywhere. Wherever then that's different. That's a vast difference. Now, truth expresses through everything at all times, because truth is. It just is. There is no place in all of the universes you can't find truth, because truth expresses everywhere. Truth is the divine. Would you not agree that truth is God? Because if we say the truth is not God, then we have to say the truth's created. And if we say truth's created, then we no longer have truth. So we agree that truth is God. Are we in agreement? If we say the truth is God, do we admit that God is everywhere? Never absent or away? That's where truth is. It's everywhere. And all we have to do is ask for it inside of ourselves. And when we ask for it inside of ourselves, by the law of asking, we become receptive. And by becoming receptive, we have a tendency to become aware. And becoming aware, the law says we shall experience that which we become aware of. Does that help with your question?
thank you.
You're welcome. Would you rise, please? Yes, I'll be right with you.
With the visualization of the color of golden, which is universally known as the color of wisdom, help in visualizing wisdom?
If the color gold or golden means wisdom to the conscious and the subconscious mind of the student, then indeed would visualization upon it be most beneficial.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Yes. How many times does the mind have to hear truth before it can accept truth?
That depends upon the mind of the individual. For example, a person, any mind, can accept truth on Tuesday and totally, wholeheartedly, and completely deny it on Thursday. The reason that that happens is very simple. The student or individual was on a level which was receptive to the expression of truth on Tuesday and was on a level which was not receptive to it on Thursday. In other words, desire may have taken precedent over one's search for truth. Oftentimes this happens on the spiritual path. Many, many times the student will come in all gung-ho and seeking truth. That's what they really want. They want the light. They want truth. Fine. They will study and do what they feel is great effort for a certain length of time. Then, all of a sudden, all these submerged personal desires start to come up well within their being. And when that happens, truth goes down there, and desire fulfillment comes up here, and so we don't see truth. We're grounded in self. Balance is the keynote of what the wise one has tried to teach over these many years. You see, you have the day and you have the night. Let's not deny the truth of creation. Let us not deny that it is dual, that it has its highs and its lows, that it has its ups and it has its downs. But try to reach a balance between the two. All things in their proper place will bring harmony to the soul. Yes. Now, are there any other questions? Yes, has a question in group 5, please.
There have been some terms which have been recurring, which I've been trying to get straight myself, which I noticed came up again in Discourse 8.
Yes.
And I wish if you could elaborate a bit within the understanding of the living light on the terms electrical, magnetic, and odic, which were given several classes ago.
Yes.
And the terms energy, force, and power.
Energy, force, and power. We'll start with electric, magnetic, and odic. According to his teachings, he teaches that the conscious mind is the electrical mind. It is the positive. He also teaches that the subconscious is the negative or the magnetic, the great attractor. He teaches that the superconscious is the odic, the neutral, the power itself. He teaches that power, force, and energy are also another trinity. That power is in the conscious or the positive, that force is in the negative or the magnetic or subconscious, and that energy is the odic or the neutral. Does that help with your question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, I'll be right with you. Would you rise, please?
So just getting away from that question, I wondered, and I don't know whether I'm on the line or not, when we're in class, do we not gather just the same as if we were in an unfolding class guides to us? And if we drop out of these classes, do we leave these guides hanging mid-air? I mean, we don't take them with us, certainly, do we, if we do not attend our classes? Or do they go on to another student or something else, I guess, maybe who is interested in this, through the law of attraction?
In reference to your question, I have never conducted a class of his teachings that there weren't those interested from the other side who were attracted to the students. Of course, we understand and accept, if one goes by the wayside, that that is the fulfillment of the law of merit of the individual, either in the flesh, of course, or out of the flesh. They bear that personal responsibility. Vibrations that are predominant during the class meetings. When a class is given in the physical world, there are those in other dimensions who are interested in the subject being taught. For example, in reference to these little teachings here, they came from the other dimension, and there are those in the other dimension very interested in not only in how they're being received, but how they're being applied. It is the application of the living light that changes one's life. And in changing one's life, their spirit indeed is born. But without the application of it, it has no value except a pretty cover. There is no other value to it, unless they are daily applied. So many people think in unfoldment that we can sit for a certain length of time each day religiously, 7 days a week, and that's going to unfold our spirituality. How far that is from the truth. And that will be demonstrable to anyone who tries it. It does not work that way. When you are trying to unfold spiritually, you don't do it once a day in your closet and forget about it the other 23 and a half hours of the day. You put your spirit, your soul, into all your acts and activities. You keep the thought of the divine foremost in your mind, whether you're typing a letter or sweeping the street. If you will do that and not forget who is first, if you will really do that each day, every moment, in every way, you will unfold your spirit, and you won't be concerned about all of this mundane creation that seems to plague the mind. If you'll always remember that there's a divine power and it's working in everything you do, whether you like it or not, and you will put that divine power first and stop forgetting the divinity, you will unfold spiritually and be willing to accept whatever job comes your way, Because no matter how humble the job, it's God's work if you are godly at the moment that you're doing it. Thank you. Now, though someone else had a question, could you rise, please?
I wonder if you would expand a bit on the law of disassociation and offer some technique that we could use in everyday living to practice it.
Yes, the law of disassociation is mentioned in the book is a very, very important law because in our daily activities we oftentimes find ourselves exposed to a multitude of levels. We're constantly having to be on guard. We best be on guard, or we're going to slip into levels that we don't care to visit because we know them too well. So he has given the law of disassociation. The law of disassociation is to disassociate one's inner being, one's spirit, one's soul, from the personality form of the individual. Now, if you find yourself in levels that are not beneficial to you, the first thing is to recognize that the level is not beneficial. How do you recognize that the level is not beneficial? Simply by remembering that you were there before and no good results came out of that level. So why bother to entertain it again? It's only a waste of your time and a waste of your energy. Now, if you can remember that as you're being triggered to another level, then you can disassociate yourself. You can think of a multitude of things. He gave a specific teaching, a specific exercise in how to become another person, to get outside of yourself, to get out of your self-related thoughts. Man's greatest problem is his own grounding in his own universe. He's narrowed himself down to what he calls an individual. He's forgot all about God and became an individual. That's what's the problem, why we have so much of this upset and disturbance. He forgot how great he truly is, that he's the stars and the moon and the sun, that he's every blade of grass, that he's a part of the trees and the dogs and the cats and all people in all universes. He forgot that and became a kingpin. And when he became a kingpin, he had nothing but problems because he had a whole kingdom to run, his own. Think of the power that runs all the kingdoms. So we want to know something about how to disassociate ourselves from ourselves. Well, you can think of many things. Anything that will take you outside of yourself. If you can think of another individual who has a need, a great need, and you can find yourself in an attitude of mind to be of service for the greater good, you'll immediately get disassociated from your own personal acts and activities. And of course, by so doing, you will be greatly benefited. Remember that energy follows attention. So choose wisely where you place your attention, because that's where you're directing your life-giving energy. Every time you look around in this world and you feel yourself disturbed, remember, you're sending your energy to that disturbance, you're feeding it, and it will increase and grow. The longer you entertain a thought, as I have often spoken, the more difficult it's going to be to get out of it. And so it is that we have these difficulties, seemingly, in making changes. As he explained in the opening of this class, the reason the change is so difficult is because we're so conditioned to failure. The mind is totally conditioned to failure because it accepts fear, which is nothing more than energy expressed in the negative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, has a question. Yes.
Two short questions, Richard. The first one, I want to go back to the missing link for a moment.
Yes.
And say that many of our scientists today are starting to feel like this business about evolution has been a multi-million-dollar scientific hoax. That they're feeling now that animals can evolve and insects can evolve, but man himself has freedom of choice and a free mind, and he cannot evolve. He has to use his mind to adapt himself to environments. Could you comment on that? And after that, then I have one small question.
Yes. He spoke in Discourse 8 in reference to the missing link will not be found on your planet because on your planet it did not exist. Without going into too long a discussion in regards to the evolution of the species, it is my understanding that the human race, the human being, has evolved, but has not evolved on this particular planet on which it is now residing. Therefore, the physical form missing link will not be found here. Now, is specifically, I think, asking a question in reference to the difference that the animals, although no matter how high they evolve, they do not have this free will or choice that the two-legged animal seems to have. There are 9 species, basic breakdowns of life on each and every planet. The epitome of this particular planet is known as the human race. Now, animal, tree, and mineral are governed by what you might call a group intelligence. That is about the best way that I can explain it publicly. It will never, in other words, the dog will never evolve to the point of free will that man experiences. His species never will. Neither will the elephant or the tree or anything else. It has a limited choice or free will in the species that it is in. It really does. A dog has a certain limited choice. He can choose between this dish of food and this dish of food. But it is definitely limited. What was the other question?
The other question is in regards to the living light. I would like to have your comments on the difference between wisdom and knowledge.
Oh, yes. To my understanding, wisdom is a total awareness on a spiritual level. Knowledge is a total awareness on a mental level. Yes. That help with your question? Yes. Has a question, please.
So this is, while we were talking here, I was thinking of how many of us have understanding and we are endowed with some intellect. What about the many, many persons who are selfless, who give their lives for others and do so much good work? Are they not, how can they know these lessons and know these things so they can evolve to a higher rate of vibration or a higher level? I've seen people that have really gone into lepers' caves and helped, not thinking of themselves at all, trying to help. And as I said, the mental level is very low.
The what level is very low?
The mental. They couldn't understand all these teachings. These teachings are given to us. How can
Oh, well, they may not need these teachings because they may have received them before.
Yes.
Man's evolving, you understand. You see, teaching, this is not new. It's very, very old. Its centuries cannot be counted. Teachings come in different forms at different times to different people. Now, some people are born in this earth realm and they're just basically very good people, and like I said, and they try to help and etc., but they haven't had these teachings. And I tried to explain to you, perhaps they don't even need them, perhaps they had them before, and they are expressing, you understand, they are applying the teaching. You see, they don't need it because they're applying it. They put it into application so they wouldn't need to read it or study it because they're applying it, hopefully. Yes, that will be right with you. Had a question.
May I put two and two together on that? You stated a little earlier, and you just restated again, that spiritual awareness is not possible without application, without daily application of principles. That wisdom is total spiritual awareness.
Indeed it is.
And application are absolutely inseparable.
It is. The light can only glow through application. Application is the law through which the light shines, and without application it does not shine. It just does not shine. Now, people apply the law in many ways. No one is to tell a person how they are to apply the law, because that is their individual right. But without application, there is no light. It cannot be. The energy cannot express itself until it is applied. It lies dormant like the divine. You see, God is like a great slumbering wisdom, just waiting to move. But it takes man, it takes will to make the move. And when man makes the move, the divine keeps him going. Yes, now I had a question in group 7.
A little different about that dog and tree situation, because I don't feel that they're limited at all. I think they reached their highest form of evolution. But since it's different from ours, does not necessarily mean it's limited.
All form is limited.
Well, limited to that extent, but not for judgmental.
No, there's no judgment on animals, dogs, cats, trees, or flowers. In fact, they're my greatest friends.
I feel like they run through it and you run through it.
Oh, certainly. Only, there's no limit to the divine. The only limit that exists, you understand, friends, is in the form. There is no limit to the divine. You cannot limit the limitless, of course. Definitely, absolutely. Yes.
Well, wouldn't it
Rise, please.
Yeah, all right.
You'll lose 20 pounds in these classes, at least.
Anyway, wouldn't it be something like, I heard explained one time about this group thought, that things are in, we're in a group thought right now. When a reincarnationist pass on, they go on into that rate of vibration because this was their level of thinking. A Jewish person goes into a Jewish vibration of heat. It isn't all spirit world. It isn't all unlimited. They are limited because of their thinking what they were. Well, wouldn't this be the same thing? A tree thinks, but a tree is thinking tree consciousness.
Absolutely, because that's what its soul is.
That's what I get right now. I'm very inspired right now. Anyway, has a rock consciousness?
Definitely.
It thinks rock.
And that's what it thinks, so that's what it has, of course.
Well, in other words, everything has its natural rate of vibration by this group thought. And we shall always be in, as far as we know, I mean, a mother is always a mother if she's gone on 1,000 years before. The sanguinary die.
As long as she's governed by the thought.
By the thought.
And when we're no longer governed by the thought, then we're governed by something else. Because you see, form cannot exist without being governed. It's impossible.
Well, is the sanguinary tie ever severed? I mean, while does a mother or father announce or someone go on so far that they are no more that?
In time, some do. All do in eternity. Certainly because the only reason they're a mother in this particular expression of life, and look how short it's been. Very short, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, but I do know that...
You have one mother, one earth mother. Well, you don't think that this is just the beginning of our life or the end, do you?
No.
We came from somewhere, from something, and we've got to go to somewhere, to something. Not just a summer lamb, that's only another step.
I'm getting another teaching somewhere in here.
Well, yes, because you see, if you have an earth mother, you have one earth mother. You have one earth father. So we're speaking about earth. What about the rest of the solar system?
Well, in time, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We are attached to the forms that we need. When we outgrow the need, the attachment disappears. As long as we need identity in this particular form, that's as long as we're going to have it. Remember that the universe is the law's meditation, and man is an idea of it. As mind is ever one in substance with the idea and the whole idea, so man and the law and the universe are one and the same. There is no difference. We are what we think. And so we think the way we are. Does that help your question on the sanguinary ties?
Yes, I saw the picture after you started talking a little bit more. I was just thinking and trying to clarify, the people from the spirit world that come and say, your mother is here, your father is here, and they go on, and they say a master is here who was once your father, your mother, or something like this. And I just wondered how long this thought continues.
Well, you see, a thought is a thought, absolutely. A thought continues as long as there's energy feeding the thought. You say?
Yes, I'm got to have a glimpse of it, yes.
As long as we think pink, we're going to see pink. If we think blue, then we're going to see blue.
Well, as long as we have a need for that thought, that's better.
As long as we have a need, we will have the attachment. So the wise man starts eliminating his needs because they're false computations caused by brain stuff. Yes, would you rise, please?
Where do our thoughts come from?
Excellent question. Where do our thoughts come from? Anyone have an answer? Well, being thought, my friends, that's where they come from. We are thought. Consequently, when you ask the question, where do our thoughts come from? They come from what we are. We are thought. And they just multiply themselves. You see, man is a thought. The tree is a thought. The stars are a thought. That's all thought. That's what it is in truth.
Isn't there something that comes before thought?
Isn't there something that comes before thought? Absolutely and positively, the divine. The formless and the free. Yes, rise, please.
Didn't you just say that, one little question, didn't you just say that the universe was the Lord's meditation?
Without effort, there's no reward. I couldn't hear you. Would you rise, please? Thank you.
Didn't you just say that the universe was the Lord's or the Law's meditation?
Indeed, the universe is the Law's meditation.
Well, that would be thought.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
as it is often spoken of, where we are now is illusion, which is thought.
All form is illusion. All form is illusion. And the reason that we experience so much delusion is because we are illusion. Only the formless is free, and only the formless is true. Yes?
Would it be possible that if you say star of thought, or like people of thought, you didn't believe in people, or like also, you didn't believe in the star, like you didn't believe, like you say, you didn't believe in its form, and that it was therefore just thought, would you not see it? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely. You cannot see what you do not believe. Definitely. Now many people say, I don't believe that, but I see it. You believe it in your mass mind, and that's why you see it. You cannot see what you do not believe. Yes?
Faith. Is faith believing?
Faith is greater than believing. Faith is an absolute knowing of things that cannot yet be believed. It is greater than belief.
So therefore,
faith is spiritual, and belief is mental.
but yet the thought is spiritual? No.
Thought is mental. Without mind, nothing exists. Mind is the great illusion. Mind. Without it, there is no form.
Right. Mind is mental, right? Mind is mental.
Yes.
So if you were able to believe in get yourself off of the attachment of the mental level, which would mean you would not, if you were on a spiritual level completely, would that mean you would not see people? You would not see, but yet feel?
You would be. You would be.
You would just be, but there would be no thing of form that would enter your mind.
You would have no mind for it to enter.
Right, because you wouldn't have mind.
That's right. Then you're formless and free.
And there really isn't a way to do that if you're,
it's known as cosmic consciousness.
Yeah. I just can't see how somebody could do that, though, because of everything they have to do with this world every single day that they live. They have to go out to the grocery store, therefore they have to see the grocery store in order to get there.
It happens in moments to some people.
But it is so.
But it's a fleeting moment.
But it is what you're saying you're striving for then?
No, I didn't say I was striving for that. No, I'm still in form. We're striving to be free from the bondage of form, to find the peace that passeth all understanding. We're not striving to get out of form. We're striving to refine form with new thought, with new belief.
Like recognize the form while you're in it. And then recognize.
We already recognize it by the law of being aware of it, by being in it. We've recognized it.
But therefore, being able to have a conception in your mind of what you're talking about, the spiritual world, the spiritual world afterwards. Therefore, it would help you all the more along when you die. Is this what you're...
Yes, to be aware that everything is a passing illusion, that all form in truth is illusion, it's made of mind stuff, absolutely, then you would not put your faith in form. You would put your faith where faith truly belongs, the formless and the free. That's faith. That's the faith that moves the mountain, because you see, it comes before the mountain. That's why faith moves the mountain. It precedes it. Yes.
If anyone wants to, this is just a little thought, if anybody wants to really know about cosmic consciousness, in the St. Vincent Millay wrote a poem called Renaissance. And she tells being in this dimension and how she felt in it. I'm not going to tell you, but anyway, do read it, and how she felt when she had this cosmic consciousness, when she was one with everything in the universe, and it's very rare. Very rare, and how after being that, she came back to the form and was very grateful for that too, because that was part of everything it is too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Now, are there any more questions? Time's getting late. Yes,
I know, I'm still kind of stuck on the word thought. In other words, do you mean don't worry about thought because it's just illusion?
yes, absolutely. Definitely. Worry is thought also. See? So that's thought and thought.
In other words, thoughts really don't mean anything.
Well, they mean things to those who are living in the thought dimension, and to especially to the poor souls who are attached to a thought dimension, because then they're governed by all these thoughts.
Well, then should you just go through life saying, who cares? It's just a thought.
Well, if that's what you've merited.
It doesn't say.
Would you rise, please?
Okay, I remember reading in the Living Light, it says thoughts are things.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, beware of what you think.
Definitely.
So don't just...
Can you show me anyone that stopped thinking since you've been in class?
I hope not.
Huh? Yes, would you rise, please?
Yes, well, I think that you and I had probably a little understanding from our former teacher on the difference between thought and idea. That thoughts can be good and bad, but an idea is always divine. There's not a bad idea, so it's...
Can't be because it's neutral.
And so if you can take your thoughts and try to get an idea, change them into an idea, you have something good to work on. Am I not right?
Well, we're speaking on another level now, yes.
If you can't have thought, then how can you send, if you're in healing, we'll say, and you want to send healing energy or vital force or vital life or whatever name you want to tack onto, but you're still speaking of the light, the energy. So how can you send that out in its positive form?
In order that it may reach a soul who is yet in creation, it's necessary to use the laws of creation, which would be the vehicle of thought. You see, remember, we must use the vehicles of the dimension in which we are expressing. Consequently, like the lady has asked in reference to healing, certainly when we must use the vehicle of thought, because the person that we're praying to be healed is in thought, and therefore receptive to thought. Now,